Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, and it's my first wedding anniversary. But my wife has got to work today, so we're still making videos, and today we are talking about Feraligtar EX, or as I think it's going to be in the very near future, Feraligtar GX. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we know that Japan is getting Champion Road. And we also know that Champion Road is featuring functional reprints of old EX era cards. Now, I say no, what we have is a box where we can see that the images have basically been taken from EX era cards, i.e. we're getting functional reprints. The thing is, if you look at the front of this pack, you see Feraligtar and Sizzle really jumping out, along with Articuno and Salamence. The thing is, we've already had it confirmed that we are getting Articuno and Salamence GXs. That's part of the reason we know they're reusing the old artwork, and we're assuming functional reprints, although we haven't got clear enough images to properly look at them. I've told you what I can, I've done a video, I'll pop a link in the description. The thing is, I think we're going to be getting a Feraligtar EX reprint as Feraligtar GX, because if you look at the front of the box, it's one of the most prominent Pokemon, and it had an EX back in the day, and it's a popular Pokemon. And if we look at Feraligtar EX, I think it's a really good card that we really need in the format. So I'm going to do this video assuming that we're getting a functional reprint, by which I mean slightly different stats, increased HP, etc., but essentially does the same thing in Champion Road, and we're going to look at what that would mean. Now, there is only one Feraligtar EX we had. It was from Unseen Forces, and honestly, I don't like the artwork, but we're going to have to get past that. Now, back in the day, you had a HP of 150. Nowadays, that's not even as good as a regular non-GX Stage 2. Think something like Dragonite, and it's miles below my boy Mamoswine. But we can expect it to have 250 HP, like these big, bulky Stage 2 GXs. Think something like Metagross. Awesome. And in terms of the weakness, it could be lightning or grass, so we can't speak too much about that. But we can expect it to be a water type, which means it would have access to both Aqua Patch and Brooklet Hill. And of course, Brooklet Hill is an amazing card just for getting these Pokemon out nowadays, so that in and of itself is incredibly nice. But the reason we really want this back, and the reason I think it is coming back, this is not a regular speculation, this is a prediction, ladies and gentlemen, because I do think Feraligatr is so prominently on the pack for a reason, and I do think we are getting this. The ability, Pokebody as it was then, ability as it is now, would shake up the format in a way that we are going to sorely need. It says that as long as Feraligatr is your active Pokemon, each player's Pokemon, excluding Pokemon EX, cannot use any Poke Powers or Poke Bodies. To put it another way, it is basically the inverse of Glaceon GX, although it affects both players, not just your opponent. Glaceon blocks GXs and EXs from having abilities. Feraligatr blocks non-EXs, non-GXs from using abilities. And we're going to need this, because you see, when the rotation hits, Garbodor is gone. We are losing Garbodor, which means this universal ability lock that we've got now is going away. Now we're still going to have access to Alolan Muck, and Alolan Muck is going to be useful for various things. Turning off something like Eevee's Energy Evolution, for instance, would be very useful. That's a good use for it. Turning off something like Oranguru's Instruct to draw extra cards is kind of useful. And as I mentioned, we're still going to have Glaceon GX, so something like Zoroark using Trade or Tapu Lele using Wonder Tag would again be turned off here. But what we don't have is any way, or what we won't have, I should say, is any way to turn off abilities of evolved non-EX, non-GX Pokemon. And we're going to need it. I mean, take a couple of prominent examples. Something like Magnezone. Now, we're going to talk about this in the coming weeks, coming days, but Magnezone, along with Duskmane Necrozma, is starting to see a bit of play, and it is starting to see a little bit of success. But what we don't have at the moment is any way to turn off Magnezone's ability. And let's face it, we've had ability lock for a while now. Before we had Garbodor, we had Garbodor. Slightly different Pokemon, but exact same ability, in the same skin, because it's the same Pokemon, just a few little things changed. We had Silent Lab, which admittedly only turned off basic Pokemon, and we had Hex Maniac, a supporter card that allowed you to always turn off abilities whenever you felt like it. It's been a very long time since we had a format where we were stuck with abilities and couldn't use them. So I don't really think we're going to be back in that situation. And something like this Feraligatr's ability would be huge. Want another example? How about Alolan Ninetales? Alolan Ninetales has the potential to be over the top good in the new format because the ability gives it immunity from, well, GXs. Technically EXs as well, but they're all getting rotated out in September, or at least I am 99.9% sure that they are. Which means that if your opponent doesn't have a good answer to this, you pop Alolan Ninetales up, and your opponent just goes, well, now what? Like, I can't knock that out. Now, you may think that's a good thing. You may think that that is a way that people can build their decks to give themselves an advantage over the competition, and I wouldn't be upset for you if you did think that. Because you know what? It's an absolutely valid point. But I don't like the idea of having no ways to turn off these abilities. Now the thing is, it doesn't turn off GX abilities. Something like Zoroark and Tapu Lele could be a slight pain, and GX abilities are really big right now. But then again, it would enable you to play Feraligatr with something like Zoroark, so you rely on EXs and GXs while your opponent doesn't and you get to screw them over. Or you force your opponent to either prepare for Glaceon or prepare for Feraligatr, but they can't always prepare for both. And I think this would make deck building very interesting. The one thing I do quite like is that nothing would turn off Solgaleo's ability. This is a new Solgaleo whose ability takes away weakness from all of your Pokemon, because Glaceon can turn off the ability, but only when it's in the active. So technically, if you were using Solgaleo with a Pokemon that was weak to water, and you had that Pokemon in the active, then Glaceon would be turning off Solgaleo's ability. Otherwise, Solgaleo just keeps his ability, because Glaceon's not hitting for weakness anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant. You're an evolved Pokemon, so Alolan Muck wouldn't turn you off, and you are a GX, so Feraligatr wouldn't turn you off. Now, in terms of the attacks, I do not think that we can be anywhere near as sure as this, because even if we're getting functionally the same Pokemon, we can probably expect the damage output and the attack cost to change, meaning that we really cannot sit here and analyse in any great detail. Just to quickly run through, the old Feraligatr for a water and a colourless did 30, plus 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, and for a water and 3 colourless did 70, plus 10 more for each damage counter on the defending Pokemon. As it is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't really think we can read much into these, because this will change. It's really the ability that interests me. And I've mentioned Glaceon, but do remember that both Glaceon and Feraligatr will be water Pokemon, so that means that you could play both in a deck, and if you're against EX and GX abilities, in comes Glaceon. Non-EX, non-GX abilities, in comes Feraligatr. That could be fun. Now, of course, you could spot a slight flaw in the logic here, because, of course, Japan is still using X and Y onwards, and Japan is where the cards get introduced, so is Japan going to introduce a card just to save our format? No. No, I don't think they are. But Feraligatr is one of the first partner Pokemon with whom you can start a game. It's the only first partner Pokemon, other than Blaziken, on the front of that particular pack. It's very prominent, and it's got an ability that would be great in the format we're in at the moment. I believe we are getting a reprint of Feraligatr EX. And let's face it, the cards we are getting in Champion Road are going to be reprints of old EX era cards. So it's not like we're just taking a shot in the dark here. I think it's a decent shot that we're going to be getting this. But ladies and gentlemen, as always, maybe you disagree with me, maybe you don't. Tell me if you think I'm right that we're getting this, and tell me what you think would be the effect if we did. Go nuts. But remember the rule, It's my wedding anniversary, so today more than any day, be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc., you can do so over at patreon.com/PTCGRadio. And do go check out my other channel, Wassy Plays. I want to get 1,000 subs so we can get a vanity URL, and we are less than 300 away, so go check that out. I would be delighted. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.